You're listening to WKDW Radio 97.5 and KDWRadio.com, broadcasting from the Bishop West. Oh, I said Bishop West, believe it or not. Let's not say Bishop West this time. Let's say I'm live from the Remax Palm Real Estate Mobile Tower right here in Northport, Florida. We used to have Bishop West as our sponsor, but Remax Palm has been gracious enough to take over as our sponsor of our tower. And remember, as citizens of Northport, 97.5 FM is your emergency network. So turn to 97.5 FM or kdwradio.com on the internet and listen to any emergency updates directly from City Hall. I've got a very, very special guest in the house, Miss Nancy Gallinaro. No, oh, I knew I was going to say it wrong. Gallinaro. How
You
are you
got
doing
it.
today? Got it right the second time. So how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, John. Doing just great. Thank you
So
for
we,
having me on.
not a problem. We've got a lot going on within public works and a lot of experience at City Hall. So can you kind of give us an overview of who you are and what your background is and what position you hold at City Hall now?
Sure. So I have quite a vast background, so I'll try to give you the Reader's Digest version. But I
Fantastic.
am the Director of Utilities for the Utilities Department here for the City of Northport. And we are not in City Hall, which
That's true.
we're actually in trailers because our buildings were destroyed in the hurricane
Right.
this time 2 years ago now. So we are hoping that our trailers will make it through this event so that we aren't homeless by the end of the week. And so it was funny. We did a workshop the other day with my staff up in Tampa, and they asked us all to stand up and introduce ourselves, where we were from, and how long we had been in the business. And there are very few people left that I actually have worked with, but there were a few. And I actually have been doing this for 44 years.
Oh my goodness.
And yeah, I started right out of high school. We like to say we started as children because it sounds better. But my friend Randy, who is the director in Pompano, has 47 years. So he beats me every time. So I'm hoping he doesn't retire so I don't feel quite so old. But my career has spanned starting in Maine vocational education to working in a laboratory to moving to Florida. Spent 11 years in Florida working on my career here. Ended up in Boston on the Boston Harbor Cleanup Project and managing the 1.2 billion gallon a day wastewater treatment plant, eventually leading to being the director overall of collections for Boston and 42 communities. From there, I was COO of the Wilmington, the city of Wilmington. Well, it actually became the Cape Fear Public Utility Authority for the city of Wilmington. They were under a consent order due to not doing what they were supposed to do. They had stopped growth, and they had to develop a authority. And I was asked to go down there and help them put the operations together. So I did. When they turned that back over to the city, I came back to Florida. I was the director of strategic planning for Palm Beach County utilities. And then my parents got very sick, so I had to go back to Maine to take care of them for 8 years, that season of their life. And I had the privilege of being the city of Portland, Maine, the largest city in Maine, their water resources manager, and worked through a consent order, administrative order, and a stormwater utility for that city before coming back here and being able to work for the city of Northport. So it's a long career. It's a great career. I love what I do, and I love the people I get to do it with every day. So.
And the beauty is you've got a lot of experience. And I think the first question I would ask you is, how does Northport match up with our preparation for the future as far as water goes? Now that you have that vast knowledge, where do you see us in how we're sitting today and what we're forecasting for the future?
That's a great question. I've said this before, even at the dais, that this is the very first city that I've ever worked for in any way, shape, or form that was not under a consent or an administrative order by the EPA or DEP. that puts us in a very good spot because we're not starting off in the negative. We are a utility that was holding its own for a very long time from general development. It was turned over. So the city really didn't have, an official, very formal sort of formation as far as the utility goes. They did what they did and they did it well, but it's not, even though we've never done anything wrong and we've done the best that you cannot beat the staff here. They're unbelievable. We're not prepared necessarily for what's coming. But the good news is we have time to prepare, and we are preparing. We're doing a lot of things now in preparation for that, but we're not doing it under the force and the direction and the timeline of the EPA. We're doing it our way because we know it's the right thing to do. And that puts us in a really good position to do the right thing for the right reasons. And it's easy to talk about. I don't have to force anybody to do anything.
Yeah, there is some beauty in everything that you're talking about because if we're not in control, things are a little dicier, aren't they?
They are, and you can end up spending money where you may not need to spend it, or on projects that aren't necessarily the number one priority, because the state or the federal government's only looking at one specific area of failure, and they're not looking at the big picture. So they're not integrating projects for you to be able to see what's really needed in order to be in compliance. So they force the issue. They give you a timeline at which you have to do this and that and that and this, and that's what you have to do, or you're going to suffer more penalty, more fines, etc. So it's not where you want to be ever.
Well, and I don't want to intermix the referendum in for the wrong reason, but it seems to me that the referendum kind of fits in this category because if we don't have the right funding because of an event like Hurricane Ian caused us before, if we have that same draining before, if we have some of these projects that are I don't want to say mishandled because that's a bad word. That's just not even a good representation of what I'm trying to say. But if we have a lot of these projects that are out there and having to go to the state scenario, is that kind of what you're talking about there too when we're not doing things correctly?
Well, so I'm very pro referendum.
Okay.
I've never worked any place that did not have the ability to go for state revolving funds. State revolving funds can run from 0 to 2% interest with principal forgiveness. They are a staple in our industry because when we need to do something, when we have gone through the process of identifying that something is wrong, doing a deeper dive on its ability to function and its capacity to function and to serve the community, our decisions to repair or replace need to be very sudden. They're not projects that can generally stretch out over time and go for a vote and then put that into the public's hands to say, well, no, we don't think you should spend the money. And it's like, well, you have to spend the money or you're going to be out of compliance. And if you're out of compliance and the state comes in and says, you better find the money. So you don't want to get to the other side of that where you're being forced to go out and get the money. You want to be able to carefully and strategically identify your needs, borrow money if you need to, justify that, be very transparent about it, do the project, pay it back over a long period of time so that everybody's paying for the project, not just the ratepayers that are out there today. We only have 27,000 customers in a population of 90 some thousand. So they will bear the cost of what needs to be done versus spreading that out over the future population. So, just doesn't make sense not to be able to fund certain projects. They don't necessarily have to be if it's an emergency, you didn't do something to prepare yourself for it or to fix it in advance before it failed.
So your 44 years of experience, the city of Northport is the only one that you've worked for that doesn't have the borrowing power?
Yes.
Wow.
I didn't even know such a thing existed, quite frankly.
Well, I think a lot of us are saying the same thing when we are now realizing that we don't have that. I just assume we always had that. knowing that though, the I'm going to ask you a different way because I follow a lot of social media feeds, and there's some we do have the naysayers out there that are don't vote for it, vote for it, don't vote for it. I kind of figure them to be the naysayers about everything. But so I want to talk about no vote. What I'd like to talk about though in that regard is that when you guys are talking as far as staff, and like Northport Ford has events and you guys Q&A and do a great job getting information out. Your 44 years of experience really highlights the need. You're not telling people how to vote. You're really educating them on the need to vote yes for the referendum, but it's ultimately the voters' responsibility to get educated in this manner, right?
Oh, absolutely. I think, I mean, I can be a conspiracy theorist with the best of them, believe me. So I can understand people's apprehension about government. I absolutely do.
Right.
I have it myself in a lot of cases. We won't go there. That's a different day. But
Yes.
I can tell you that any time that every year in any other job, I would sit down with my leadership and I would go over the projects that are necessary and I would provide the backup for those projects. It's not like I can go in and say, well, I think we should do this project this year. How about let's go for a big $15 million loan? Like, I can't do that. And I have to be able to back that up because also can't go to the state and say, I would like to borrow your 0 to 2% interest money and do this project. They're going to want to know what that project is and they're going to approve it or not approve it. So, that money isn't just handed out to people for no reason. You have to be able to back that up. And we have ways of doing that in the utility. We have a laundry list of projects because it has been a cash only business for so long. We have a backup of projects. And we take those projects, we run them through what's called a risk and a consequence of failure model. And so that means that every project that we put out there that we think we need to do, and we need to prioritize them, we run it through risk. What is the risk of not doing it? What's that going to, could it cause a sewer spill? Could it cause, harm to our community? And then the consequence of it failing is, large numbers of people going to be without water? Things like that. So we look at every possible scenario of risk and consequence of failure, and that ranks our projects. If we have projects that are over $250,000, let's say, we have a threshold of that, we will run that through a business case. So we can take another closer look at this project and say, is this project really necessary? Let's get the experts in the room. Let's vet that out. Is it necessary? Are there any alternatives to that project that might be more cost effective? And is there a better price? And so any projects are over $250,000, we'll go through that process. And that's the kind of information that starting next year, I'll be able to bring to the commission with my budget. So I believe that a city should be transparent, that the citizens should know what the money is being spent on. I have nothing to hide and everything to gain by showing people and talking to people. So, none of these things they're not fun things to do in a utility. Wastewater sewerage is very corrosive. Water treatment is very expensive. When we have to take money out of our operating budget to pay for a pipe because we don't have the ability to borrow the money, you're just flatlining your utility. Utility is not able to grow. It's not able to build staff. It's not able to keep staff. It's not able to train staff. It's cash only doesn't work. Cash cannot keep up with inflation. So,
And that is, I think that's the loudest message that people need to hear is we are a growing city, and being a pay as you go. And Carmine with Northport Ford always says that, if you're saving up to buy your first house, you're going to be cash only, you're going to be saving for a long while. And
mhm.
that that's one side of it. There's the car issue, there's the credit card issue, there's also the the guardrails that the city has now put into play to keep everything focused in on the need and not to overextend ourselves either. I like both ideas of one getting the borrowing down, but also the guardrails to keep the safety factors in play with us too.
Mhm.
The with our infrastructure, the way it is today, with your experience again coming into play, do we have needs that we are not really talking about enough?
Well, I think there will always be needs. I don't want to put anybody into any sort of panic because honestly, today we have good capacity. We have well-running facilities. We have a new water and wastewater plant on the Welland Park side, and we have the legacy water and wastewater plants on the legacy side. So um, the legacy side is my age. So like me, it needs some work, it needs some help. It needs you can't have something running for 60 some years and not do something to it. And so as we learned that on our plant right here on Pan Am, just recently in our wastewater master plan, that it needs a whole second grit system, that one was never enough. And it's a very large plant designed for twice what we're putting in it right now, if not 3 times. So, it's always going to cost money, and water is becoming very expensive to treat. And that's everywhere. That's universal. And
Yeah,
we have the ability to get Peace River water. They're also going up in price. There is no inexpensive way. We did a business case on 3 different ways of getting water. And then we've also got a source study out there that will be finished this year that shows that we do have access to quite a bit more water. So that's the good news. But you have to build the wells, you have to build the plant, you have to go to reverse osmosis because most water in Florida is very salty now. And if you have a well, you've learned that you have
absolutely.
to treat it no matter what. So it's very expensive when you're treating it for, this many people or 27,000 customers. So it's it's a good news, bad news. We're not anywhere near as such pain points as, say, the central part of the state that's now going to non-potable reuse or potable reuse. They're turning wastewater into water. That's an option. Going very, very deep into the lower aquifers of Florida, where it's almost entirely salt, so you can treat it. You can treat water out of the Gulf of Mexico if you want to, but it's going to cost you a lot of money
I
for
think
disposal.
I think they do that up in Tampa,
They
don't they?
do. Well, they have a plant for it, I guess. I
Right.
learned recently they may not be using it quite as much as they thought they
Well,
would.
I
That's
believe there's a massive cost with that too.
There is a huge cost. The electricity of pushing water through that kind of a filtration. Then there's the disposal of the brine, and just the energy to do the whole to do all of it is very expensive. But the water's there. And I mean, we're not going to run out of water, but we might run out of money. It's just, so you never know what's going to come down the pike. You never know what kind of unfunded mandate will be next. So far, we're doing really well as a city. People should be really proud of the staff that are in this utility and in the plants and out in the field. They're incredibly dedicated people.
And how many years do you have in Northport?
I came here in February of 22, and then I had a hurricane. So I
Right.
like to count that as not being here. Like,
Well,
it
uh,
was,
all those things being said, you've had a short window, a
yeah.
really short window, and having that short window and your educational background that you have and experience with everything, knowing that we're sitting in a good position, what do you see for us in the next 5 to 10 years as to be our true focal point as citizens when we listen to you and staff talk about water?
Um, well, for me, what I look at for the next 5 years is this utility has to be a utility of the future. It cannot be a utility of the 80s or 90s. It has to be what it has to be today. It needs a strategic maintenance plan, and we've already started to put that together. Our ISO 55001 certification that we're pursuing we've already done a gap analysis on any of the weak points that we have as a utility and how mature we are to handle the growth of the utility and the processes and procedures that are needed to do what we need to do. So we're building those gaps up. We're filling those gaps. And as I mentioned before, how we're prioritizing our projects is an ISO 55001 procedure of going through that prioritization process. We are also developing our computerized maintenance management software to be a data-driven utility so that we know the cost of everything that we're doing. And by knowing the cost, you can reduce costs, you can consolidate costs, you can do innovative things here at the utility to keep us on the path so that we're spending our money wisely, and we're also growing and educating our staff. I would never rest for a minute to think that, well, okay, we're good now. Like, we have to keep going. We have to keep pushing. And the certification helps us because it codifies this into our utility. So I retire, somebody else comes in, different leadership at City Hall, whatever the case may be, it won't die. And that's what happens to a lot of times when a director will come in, like myself, who knows, hey, let's go. We got to do this. We got to do that. Then they leave and everything just falls apart because it hasn't been codified into the organization. Everybody's not involved. People don't have any ownership of it. And we're avoiding all of those things by getting certified and bringing all of our staff into the fold. So it has to live, no matter who's here. This is the way this utility has to run. So
are we different from, and I don't mean this the wrong way to other communities around us, but are they ISO certified already, or are we ahead of that curve?
We will actually be ahead on the ISO. Palm Beach County right now is the only entity in Florida that is ISO certified. The rest are around the country. We are bringing other people into it. You don't have to get certified to exercise some of the policies that are in there. They're pretty open, and a lot of people do various parts of that. The reason that I pursued the ISO certification is because I knew that we were way behind the 8 ball. But I needed to be able to identify all of our weaknesses, not just 1 or 2 things that I could see. And so the gap analysis allowed us to get a whole 360-degree picture of our whole utility and what needs to get done. And so that was, whether we do it in 3 years or 5 years or 6 years isn't the most important thing. The most important thing is that we're pursuing excellence. And that excellence will serve our community much better than if we just, hey, this is the way we've always done it, it'll be okay. We cannot do that. We cannot afford to do that. And we're hiring really good people. The city has been, I can also say that, and I want to say this loud, because all of the cities that I've worked with all of the years, I have never seen the level of support that we get from our city manager office and the commission. They have backed us. They have listened to us. They're like, okay, you know what you're doing, go do it. They don't, I've seen City Hall instances that held back a utility to the point of being in trouble. And a lot of that is happening around us. We met with several utilities, as I said, on a workshop last week. So they're suffering, they would present their budget and they'd say, nope, can't have that. And now they're like, they've got an order. They're getting an order from the EPA. And so it's like, we don't ask for things because they're fun to do.
Right.
You ask for things because you need them.
Right.
And so,
well, I'm going to stick along that same line for a second, because the pursuit of excellence, I like that idea. And we've done that with our police department. We've done that with our fire department. I've talked with Deputy Chief as far as how I thought we were the redheaded stepchild. What I hear continuously in the last 3 to 5 years, and really, I've got to highlight this because I think more so because of the city manager coming on board. the strive for excellence. Not that it wasn't here before, but I think the target was moved a lot of times. I don't think we have a moving target other than upwards. I think people are really within the walls of City Hall, they're striving for excellence every day. These certifications are nothing to play with either, obviously,
Right.
because if they were just something of ease, everyone would have them. Th-
Right.
This has got to be a real target for you because it really sets our city up for the future, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It's when all of our policies are in place, when our maintenance program is running along smoothly. I have a real passion for maintenance because I worked in a one of the fifth largest treatment plant in the world, and I got to be there from the ground up, from the minute they closed the valve into Boston Harbor until they started putting equipment online. I was there, and they did a full asset management program with reliability centered maintenance for the entire facility, and they save millions and millions of dollars every year in maintenance costs because of the intellect that they apply to the way that they do maintenance. And I'm taking a small crew to the reliability maintenance conference in December so that they can start to we hired someone out of Coors Brewery in Colorado, where they, I know it sounds weird with a brewery, but they probably have one of the best maintenance
Great,
programs in
great
the
water,
country.
great water.
Amazing. Yeah. Yeah. Well, their maintenance is off the charts. And I knew the people that put their program in place. So we have him here, and he is just crushing it. And so we're going to have a state of the art maintenance program, because if you're going to invest, if I'm going to say to the community, hey, I need to borrow $15 million to do this little expansion in the plant or something like that, they should also know that I'm going to take care of it, that I'm going to maintain it properly, that I'm going to get the longest life cycle out of that piece of equipment that I possibly can. I'm going to watch it. I'm going to listen to it. I'm going to make sure it's not overheating. I'm going to do whatever is necessary to make sure that it gets stretched to the end. Because I have found, even in pipes, that people get way too anxious about replacing things and don't fully inspect the condition. And so I have a real passion for that, and I know that I have people here that do as well. They've just never had that formal process. So all of those things, putting them into place, that's what a utility of the future does. To have a small utility doing it is pretty extraordinary, but to me, why not? Because we're small. We can do things a lot faster, and we can be very consistent because we're not huge and we don't have 400 people working here. So we're going to do some pretty amazing things, and they should be proud of that.
I'm going to compare your mindset along the lines of our recycling program, because we built our recycling program from the young city that we were, and we've developed that. It's so much easier to have excellence when you're an infant. We're 65 years old. We're
Mhm.
still infant when it
Yeah.
comes
Oh,
to
yeah.
this. And if our goal is striving for excellence, maintaining our city to the extremes that we can do it, I'm all in.
Mhm.
I don't know that anybody out there, other than the naysayers of the world, and they're just, you know, crapping on every idea and every concept. What you're talking about, though, is really highlighting what we can be in the future, and then taking what we already have as really what I'm thinking is futuristic thoughts anyway,
Mhm.
and really maintaining them and adding onto them, and kind of forecasting how we can adapt more in the future. Am I reading that correctly?
No, I think that's fair. I think what you're kind of getting to is what I tell my staff all the time. It's not like you don't already know these things. The difference is putting it into a formalized process where it becomes a part of your culture, where it becomes a part of your routine,
Yep.
where you wouldn't settle for anything less anymore because you know how to do it better. It's like, we all know these things intuitively, especially if we've been in this field for a really long time. And most of my staff have really. I've got a lot of years. I added them all up, and they know. And they've been kind of trying to do things, but there's never been a really formal process that said, this is how you do this to get to this. And so this, having this whole program put into place and having a consultant on board, because they tried to do everything before themselves. And you can't do it. I get interrupted 50 times a day. If somebody gives me something to do, I'm like, I'll try, but it's probably not going to happen till I go home tonight, because I can't possibly commit to putting something together of that magnitude. So we have a consultant on board. They're doing a great job. They'll be with us for a while. And, they're seeing the results. I presented our progress to the city manager, deputy city manager, assistant city manager, and HR director, because it's important to us as we go through change management that they also see what's going on with the staff and how we're proceeding. And they were really pleased with all of that too. We have a full change management process as we go through this, because it does change the way people think and the way they do business every day. And it can be very threatening to people when they think, hey, I didn't sign on for this. What if I can't do it? Those are kinds of things in the back of your mind. What if I don't know how to do that? What if I don't, this was never my job before. Now it's something new. So we have to be really aware of that and help our staff come along in the process.
So I'm reading your management style into this too, and I'm digging it, believe it or
Good
not.
luck.
No, it's I
It's
think
all
we
over the
think a
place.
lot. I think we think a lot alike.
Mhm.
Because I as a realtor, I'm in my truck all the time, and my mechanic, when I go and tell him I hear a noise, I'm preemptively listening to things. My maintenance on my truck is ahead of schedule. I pay attention to it. I take care of it. And I if it is in need of something, it's done. Those are all the things you're highlighting about our water, our utilities department. And you're saying it as much as I say what I say about my truck with pride, you're saying that about our city utilities department
Hmm.
and its staff. And changing culture is not an easy thing to do, but it is much easier to do when you're talking about excellence.
Mhm.
And I don't think you're dragging people through change. I think you're uplifting them to think differently.
Yeah, I do too. There are maybe a couple that feel a little bit dragged along, but that's okay. They're coming along just fine. People are adjusting, adapting very well, and we have an internal thermostat for that as well, to make sure that we're rewarding successes and things like that. We're not just going to. I've been through the good and the bad, and I've cleaned up a lot of these messes. It's usually why I go to different places, because they want me to clean up their mess. So I know how it gets to be a mess, and it's because they leave people out. They go out and they develop something over here, and then they go do it, and then people like, do what? And it falls apart. One of my favorite stories is Miami-Dade. A good friend of mine was one of the assistant directors over there, and I had done a lot of training in asset management, and so she had called me and she said, you know, she had a beautiful South American accent, which I can't duplicate, but she said, you remember how you told us about making sure that you're always engaging with your staff and making sure they're doing doing the data entry right, and that results are coming to you and you're using them and you're showing them how you're using the results? And I go, yeah. She goes, well, we have $1 billion fine because they were blowing up sewers all over Miami-Dade. And she said they stopped doing their data entry years ago because nobody asked them for it. Nobody showed any interest in it, and they stopped doing it. They just stopped entering it, and nobody even noticed. And so now they have $1 billion fine, and they have to hire all these consultants to come in and clean up the mess. And it's a lot of work. And now you've got people who don't believe in the system anymore because they're part of the problem. And so it's just, that is not a place that we have to go in the city, because we're not there now. So why would we go back? Why would we go to that? We can only go forward. And it's really a really neat job to not have to clean up a mess and not create a mess, but be part of making sure that they always can succeed no matter what.
How exciting is that for you?
It's very
I mean,
exciting.
I
It's a
mean,
nice job.
you just described yourself as the cleanup girl, and
Yeah.
now you're the creator
Mhm.
and the futuristic thought process for a city that is 65 years old and really is not even in the realm of cities. We're not even born yet, technically.
Yeah.
And you're seeing this, but we also have some aging infrastructure
Mhm.
that we must talk about and maintain. We have 80 miles of canals, which a lot of cities don't have. Where do you see our infrastructure, and we'll talk about our 80 miles of canals for a bit. What's your focus on our canals as far as that maintenance program and how that should look?
Well, they are strictly under stormwater, and so they're under public works. So we don't really have anything to do with the canal system, except that we can pull water out of the creek for
Right.
treatment for drinking. Um, so we look to I have had stormwater under me before, and it's up north. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot harder here because you can't put in all the really cool, fun ways of absorbing water down here because you've got sand and shell. Um, but for us, so we have right now in our collective information, we have water treatment plant master plan, which looked at all of both of our plants. Well, no, actually just one plant because the other one wasn't online yet. Our legacy side water treatment plant, all of our distribution system, our metering system, all of that. And then we have another master plan it's about halfway, 3/4 of the way done now on our wastewater plants and our collection system, pump stations, things like that. We have a master plan for the expansion of our water and sewer out into the septic and well areas. We have a source water plan. So we have a lot of information. And currently, we're looking at about $80 million worth of infrastructure improvements in water plants alone and water system over the next 10, 15 years. Some of that is for fire protection. Some of that is to make sure that we have the right size pipes for fire protection. We're not in any kind of, I don't want to panic anybody. We're okay right now. But that's $80 million in yesterday's dollars, by the way. Everything is going up 20, 30%. These projects are coming in. So you can assume that that's going to be the same, if not more, probably 100 million up or more in wastewater, just because of the nature of wastewater is far more corrosive and attacking on equipment. And we're at a very high level with those plans. I would have, if I had been part of the process of getting them done, I probably would have put a lot more money into them. But what we're doing is looking at a very kind of high level needs, and then we're going to have to take a deeper dive on those things that we consider a priority when we go through our process. We'll have to look even closer at them to see what the danger is. We have a large treatment plant, but they never upgraded the discharge from the plant to the deep well injection. So as we increase our flows there with development, that's going to need to be done. That's about $15 million itself just to put a pipe in the ground. So our building came in $12 million over what we had put away for it. And so we had to defer 3 more projects that need to be done. But we're gonna have to pay cash for that. So, and we can't live in trailers. We're separated. We're hanging on, to what we have right now. But a good storm will take out these buildings. So
And that's
it's not
something
good.
else. I kind of want to highlight this for a second though, because this is the second time you've talked about the trailers. You're operating excellence through trailers. And
Mhm.
really what the city and the citizens need to hear is what is the plan? Is if the plan were to, let's say yes to the police department, doesn't that free up space at the police department we currently have to move people into? Is that sort of like the game plan or possibly?
So if that were the plan, we would be in these trailers a long time, which
I know, I don't want to do
we
that.
can't be. Um, the building is already designed. The land is already purchased. Right now, we're moving turtles because that's what we do. And then when the turtles are moved or the tortoise is moved and I think that's it. We can start to clear the lot. It's over on Pan Am across from the wastewater plant next to the social services.
Very
And
good.
that building will house administration, customer service, field operations, and maintenance.
And
And so that we
expectation
have
expectation for that building to be done?
in 18 months.
We need that so bad.
Oh
And
yeah.
that's another hurricane season.
Yeah. Yep.
And that has to really excite you to be in trailers for another hurricane
hmm
season.
Well, if I have a tropical storm, I have to send people home. I can't have them in here in a cyclone or flooding. We're right on the water, but it is what it is. And I don't want to be ungrateful that I have a place, because a lot of people in the city still are struggling with damage from buildings. Even in City Hall, there's still some leakage in
Correct.
parks, public works. We've all, police are crammed into, closets. So we're all scrambling for space. And so I don't want to sound like the crying baby over here. It's just, I worry about just, you're right. We're moving towards excellence and we're not even together. It does add an extra layer of frustration, but we're making it work. And we know we're going to watch those trees come down. We're going in our building eventually.
Well,
I'll offer to come in and help clear the land if that's what would help speed it up, but nobody's buying that.
in 44 years, would this be like the only time that you're not in a building when you're doing all these things?
Yeah. I'd have to. I've been in some pretty poor buildings, pretty bad buildings.
But they
But
were
yeah,
building.
yeah, and I have worked on a lot of construction sites in trailers, but that's because it's temporary. It's not horrible. They're actually like 5 trailers put together and it's wide open.
Sure.
It's just not, it's not ours, and it's got one
Well,
or two issues, but
well,
we'll be fine.
the truth of the matter is people. I love your approach to this, because yes, while we still have citizens out there that are in the need, we also have to have reality check. Um, we got hit by a hurricane. We got hit by some flooding. We had buildings that did not survive it. As a
Mhm.
city, we're struggling with these things right now, and we're making some adjustments as we go. But we have got to feel lucky. We've got to feel blessed, and we also have to stay focused on the future. And the future is we have to have buildings. They can't
Right.
be temporaries. Even the high schools going through the same thing. If you drive through the high school or elementary or middle schools, you'll see temporary buildings up. That's because there's a need for more,
Right.
and not more temporaries, more buildings. So we're going to get more schools. We're going to have to get more city buildings. We're going to have to build them large enough to accommodate staff for 250,000 plus to move into this city. We're all those things are futuristic planning too.
Right.
Does that, when you're talking with the department heads and leadership, how how valuable is it to have the over 100 years of experience that our city commissioner Jerome Fletcher talks about with the staff leaders? I- isn't that a huge value to be able to count on each other to
Oh,
have
yeah.
the experience and kind of get through some of these tough issues?
Oh, absolutely. I can personally say I've never been so intimate with other departments before in other jobs. We always meet, the city manager, deputy city manager. I work directly for Jason Yarborough, and we are always meeting together as a team. So I've learned from parks. I worked for Public Works in Maine, so I had a lot of public works experience, but just, what they have to deal with in the city is pretty extraordinary. Um, and the police and the fire, I get to sit with them in every commission meeting because I sit in the back behind the wall there and kind of
Yep.
going to get some work done while we're waiting. But yeah, it's this city has some extraordinary people. It really does. Really experienced. I think that's evident in the awards that they're winning at pretty much every month, if not every week. Some departments earning awards. We'll be putting in for our awards this spring for sure. But yeah, it's really, the city has a lot to be grateful for, and you probably don't see it because there's so much controversy in the world right now that it's hard to see the good through the bad. That, and I get that. I'm a citizen as well. I'm not just a city worker. I live in the city, so it's just there's just a lot of noise right now. But you have people that care, really care a lot, and they live here. And I ask that question when I have big staff meetings. I say, how many people pay taxes here? How many people pay your water bill here? And this is your city.
Right.
Like, yeah, yeah.
So
So
I'm going to
they're
ask,
great.
I'm going to ask you a different question than I ask most. So I'm going to kind of go through this. What are the top three things in what you're focused on that you've been successful at doing since you've been here since 22?
Well, I would say, first of all, is recruiting some really good talent, some new employees, getting new positions. I'll lump that together. I would say jumping off and getting the ISO 55001 certification rolling, getting our gap analysis done, getting our roadmap done, and getting our first year of our roadmap finished. Actually, we'll be finishing up this month. Um, let's see. And the third, I feel like it's just getting all of us on the same page when it comes to development. Um, and working with developers instead of having, or we're trying really hard anyway, not to have some controversial roles there, but rather let's do this smart, because there are really great smart ways to do this. And I feel like that's moving in the right direction for the most part. And what else? I think budget and capital planning too, I think is right up there. So I'd probably replace development with that. We'll leave development off in the corner. We're still
No,
working on
I liked your order. I liked your order.
yeah,
So I'm going to pick on you just a little bit with
sure.
the developer side of things, because I believe what you said is critical. I
Hmm.
I I believe that with my heart of hearts. People like to say we can't have relationships with our builders because they're pushing our town around. I believe just the opposite. I believe that when you have a great relationship with people who are building inside your city walls, you have more influence on them to create a better build out process.
Hmm.
Can you talk a little bit about the relationship and why it's so important for you to have the relationships and the rapport with the builders like you do?
Um, well, I think on the Welland Park side, and this was established long before I got here, there were always a lot of good dialogue going on, with Mattamy and the developer over there. So that was pretty easy to step into. And, they have needs, we have needs, they have things they see, and sometimes they'll call and just be like, what the heck? And it's like, okay, 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 let's see what's going on. But it allows us to have that conversation instead of it just going off and blowing up some other way. Um, they're going to develop in this city no matter what.
Yeah, there.
You can't stop that, and I think that our development services has done a phenomenal job of trying to protect that in a way that makes it so this development looks good. It serves the community well, and so now it's just a matter of working with the developers to make sure that the infrastructure needs that they'll have are we talk those things through, because you have current customers of the city who pay a water bill,
Yep.
and that money is legally to be reinvested into their infrastructure. And that's what we do with it. We reinvest it. And so the work that has to get done, the projects that have to get done. On the developer side, there are capacity fees and there are connection fees and there are things like that. And there are two ways that the developer can manage a project. They can either build it all and take the fees, or they can build it, we take the fees and pay them for the infrastructure, because now we're collecting revenue. But either way, development pays for development. It's just a matter of how it gets done. But that right there, that brings us together, because we, like I said, with Miami, with $1 billion fine, is because they developed, and never bothered to look at what was happening underground. And so we have to make absolutely certain as people come in that we have the capacity in our pipes, our pump stations, and our treatment plants to not only to serve them, but most importantly, to serve our current customers properly, because they've been paying a long time into the system and will all be paying for a long time to come. So it's not a complicated process, but some people can feel like, well, maybe we can get a little more for, it's like, no, you really can't, because at the end of the day, if you are spilling sewage, you will build nothing. It isn't just the EPA, it's the EPA's Department of Justice branch that comes in and shuts you down. They have badges and guns and they don't want to hear it. It's like, no more spilling. We don't spill. We have a collections crew out there that they have a motto of we will not spill. Like, so we're in good shape right now. We want to stay that way. We want everyone to prosper, but we're not going to do it at the expense of the environment or our current customers. So
Love it.
it's important that we can talk to each other, because we're not here to make money, and we just want to do it right. We just want to serve and protect, because that's what we do on this side of things.
And we need more open dialogue like this, talking about the environment, talking about what the future holds for Northport. And we really need to hear from you and your staff more in the future. And I'd love to have you on again, because I don't think people really truly understand the whole complete impact of what you're doing as your side of the organization. I found this to be very educational, and I look forward to many more conversations with you. I would love to talk in the future about our water treatment plants and what our future holds there. And then as far as even the raw sewage that you talked about, as we grow, we're going to have to convert, and things are going to have to change away from septic, and they're going to go into sewer, and that all that plays a role, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And we have a plan for them. We have reserve capacity for them. And that's, right now, that whole having septic tanks near water, that goes to, that has been turned over to the Department of Environmental Protection in the state of Florida. They can come in and they can be punitive towards the city or to a customer.
Right.
We don't want that. But right now they're not organized. They don't have the staff in place. But on the flip side of that, the water management districts are now monitoring nutrients. And both of those entities have a lot of power to make change very quickly. So we're keeping our eyes and ears to the ground to make sure that we're ready and protective of them.
And you know what? We have a huge impact on what we do as citizens with everything you're talking about. We have red tide out in our water, throughout the year, and we cannot be the cities that have sewage spills. I've never heard of anybody getting fired yet, but I worked in Fort Myers, and I always heard, oh, they pushed the wrong button and we had a sewage spill. I'm sorry, someone named Bob or Ted or Alice or someone pushed the wrong button. Then they should have been fired. I don't know if that's how our system works or how their system really works, but I'm just tired of hearing we've done something wrong and we'll pay the fine. We're paying more than that if we do it wrong.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you're here, because all I hear you say over and over again should be followed by the word excellence. And that's what I think you're here to do. And I think you're doing a great job.
Well, thank you, sir. I appreciate that. And you can have a sewer spill by accident, just so you know. So if it never happens,
we'll talk about the next time, because I would love to be educated on that, but I would also love to be educated on how you clean it up.
Yes, there's a big cleanup process. I've seen some big ones in my life.
I'm sure you have. So I appreciate your time, and thank you so much for being part of the show. This is John Rawlings with WKDW Radio 97.5 saying thanks for listening in. Please share this video, and don't forget, we are the emergency broadcasting network for the citizens of Northport. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks, John.
You're welcome.